So at the end of this day dedicated to the Dharma of Pleasure, I wanted to offer a few final reflections, especially relating to pleasure and insight, wisdom. By now you have probably realized that some of the things we did in the morning were examples of using certain types of pleasant, comfortable, easeful experience in the service of the practice, like finding an easeful abiding in the body or in the breath, which takes advantage of the fact that the mind likes what feels good. So we can use pleasure to have more collectedness of mind, to have more serenity, less scatteredness. We also used this calling to mind good actions, our virtue, to realize that this also helps enliven and soothe the heart and gather the mind, but it also allows us to realize that there is pleasure in something other than the individual selfish pursuit of gratification. But there is pleasure in being generous, in connecting, in helping, in being selfless. And so the mind makes this connection. Oh, this also delivers a nice feeling. But it takes training. It's mastery pleasure. It's a pleasure of training a certain skill, but also training our capacity to tune into this pleasure, which might be less shouty than chocolate cake. But nevertheless, when we gradually through the practice learn to refine our attention, we can tune into it and bathe in it, and naturally it expands. It's not like we try to intensify it, but we are training our sensibility of things that would normally perhaps fall into the neutral segment of the spectrum, not unpleasant or not very pleasant, but sort of in the middle. But as we look more closely, we see, well, it's a subtle pleasure. It's less loud, but when you refine your attention and tune into it, it's actually quite nice. And it is a training, and then it nourishes us, and it's, I don't want to say gratify us, because that's gratification we usually reserve for other things, but in a way, yes, it gives us pleasure. But even more specifically, the pleasant can be a place for insight. It is a great exploration for impermanence, with what might at first sight seem like the downside of pleasure. It ends. But isn't that the great teaching? Isn't then practicing with the pleasant a great opportunity to see impermanence at work? And see, how am I fully with the pleasant while it lasts, and then graciously navigate when it stops? That's a great practice. It's a great place to see in real time our tendency to cling, to want the pleasant to continue, to want to control it. And then see the difference between clinging to that or releasing, and how it feels. Because it may seem there is some tension and contradiction, and perhaps there is to a certain extent, between this idea that part of the practice is to go beyond our preferences, to not just buy into the underlying tendencies to seek pleasure and avoid pain, and what I'm suggesting, which is a particular type of pleasant thing. Let's seek a particular type of pleasant thing. There seems to be some tension here. But let me give you an example just from yesterday, from taking the London tube. And I went to the center, and I took from here where I'm staying, the Northern Line, and I think it's around Camden Town or something, that when you are in the tunnel in between stations, the tube is really noisy. Really noisy. And I was listening to music. It's like all these nice tunes, something I like. And then in between stations, I couldn't hear a thing of the music. The noise was louder than my headphones. Now you can do different things there. You can go, oh shit, I can't listen to my music. Unbelievable. It's what I call the let me speak to your manager attitude. And we have this attitude with life, which is but the London tube is the London tube. So I cannot go to live and say, I want to speak to your manager. Where's the supervisor? I can do that. I can cling to what I want, which is to listen to my curated playlist on Spotify and not listen to another type of sound, which I label as noise, unpleasant, undesirable. I can stick to these preferences. And then what's the result?
Dissatisfaction.
Yes, it feels bad. There's tension, there's rubbing against. What does my, let's say, hedonic thermometer do? It goes down to unpleasant. I don't want that. And what happens when I say, oh, great opportunity to practice equanimity. Sound is sound. So now I hear my music, it's nice, etc. And then it's replaced by the sound of the tube. Less pleasant, but I'm still here for it. And I just see the tendencies and I just stay there with this spaciousness. And then I get to the station, I hear the music again. And what is the result of that? I exited the tube just floating in serenity. I'm not joking. I thought, this was really nice. It feels better. So, next time I take the tube, I'll do that again. There is insight in all this process. What is the affective result of clinging and pushing away? And what is the result of being present with mindfulness, equanimity, spaciousness, etc.? The result feels different, and that is useful information. There's a lot of potential for insight here. Another thing that we can realize is that when we are in a contracted, difficult space, it is possible, but usually much harder, to be open to more possibilities. Our vision narrows, we may find it hard to connect, to open to others. And when we learn to reduce this tension and this dissatisfaction and this clinging, and we are more often in a more equanimous and, I could say, a state of well-being, it's also a place from which it is easier to empathize, to be open to others, to be less self-centered. Because it invites that. Because we are well. And sometimes we are well in the midst of difficult situations. So this is not an absolute. It's what is possible given the circumstances. Sometimes difficult circumstances. And yet we can retain some degree of stability, there is difficulty and there is well-being, and I can be well. I think there's a lot that we can gain from taking the pleasant as the object of our serious contemplation and see the variety in pleasant experiences, which ones arise from what kind of behaviors do different types of pleasure lead to, which ones carry more collateral pain or less collateral pain. It is my conviction, and I might be wrong, but so far my conviction is that if you really take seriously this contemplation of pleasure, you conclude that some of the ways that we usually try to make ourselves feel good don't deliver. That the individual selfish pursuit of gratification just doesn't feel good enough. And that doesn't mean that there is no place for sensory gratification in our lives. So there's no need to go to the other extreme. You may reach a different conclusion, but my hope is just maybe to inspire you to embark on this exploration. So I hope that you found the day interesting and nourishing, and that you got something out from it. So just really grateful for your presence and your attention and your contributions. So yeah, thank you very much.